The hacker tells Nemo that he needs to deactivate the security system. He enters the code just in time, successfully disarming the system, but only for a few minutes. Nemo sets a timer on his watch for 7 minutes and begins to hurry around the apartment looking for his target items. He spots 2 of the paintings hung on the wall upstairs, carefully stowing them away in white bags. Placing the bags at the front door, he heads into the master bedroom for the last piece of art, but finds a different painting there than the self-portrait that he's looking for. Nemo calls up number 3 on the radio to explain what's going on, but the hacker says that the painting must be somewhere and orders him to keep searching around until he finds it. With only 4 minutes left to go, the self-portrait that he's looking for is still nowhere in sight, and he needs to take whatever he has. He takes out his pocket knife and jams it into the wood, clipping away at it piece by piece. As he stops for a break, he reaches up towards the vents in the ceiling and notices that the heat has been turned on due to the damaged control panel. Thirsty, he goes to the kitchen sink and turns on the faucet, but finds out that the water has been turned off. He tries turning on the stove, but realizes that the gas is off as well. After a moment, he opens up the refrigerator to find something to eat, but inside, all he finds is gross, moldy old food. He grabs the only bit of water that he can find and guzzles it down in a few gulps. Nemo goes back to work, chipping away at the front door as the temperature inside the apartment rises to nearly 90 degrees Fahrenheit. With the beads of sweat pouring down the back of his neck, he finally breaks through the wood surface, only to realize that the door is reinforced with a sheet of solid steel. Frustrated, he slams his fist into the control panel and storms away. Night falls, and Nemo lays in the middle of the room trying to desperately get number 3 on the radio. He calls out to him over and over again, but finally gives up when he gets no response. Going back to the fridge, Nemo takes a swig off of a bottle of vodka and grabs some of the moldy food. He sits on the couch and scrapes the mold off of some of the slices of meat, making himself a rancid little snack. Flipping through the channels on the television, he eventually finds one that shows the feed from every security camera in the building. Nemo sits back and watches the guard at the front desk, wondering what he should do before climbing into one of the beds to go to sleep. Okay, before we start to come up with a plan, let's take a minute to review what Nemo's up against so far. Nemo entered the apartment via helicopter through an outdoor patio on the building's roof. But when he reactivated the security system, the sliding door that he came in through closed and sealed him in. The only other way out of the apartment is through the front door, but it seems to be sealed with an electric lock that must be connected to the damaged security system. With his only 2 exits sealed off, Nemo's stranded in there with no obvious way out, and he's going to have to get creative if he wants to escape. Nemo was quickly abandoned by his team, leaving him to fend for himself. His accomplice number 3 can't do much to help him, since calling the police or even the front desk security of the building is totally out of the question. He doesn't want to get out of this apartment only to end up in prison, so he's extremely limited with who he can try to contact for help. He managed to get the alarm and flashing lights to stop, but in the process he damaged the security system and caused the apartment's heat to turn on with no way to shut it off. This is obviously going to be a problem, or getting out through the front door. Windows in high-rise buildings like this one are usually made of strong, heat-treated glass that is designed to be very difficult to break. However, it's still possible to get the glass to shatter if enough damage is caused to its outer edge. Nemo could find a pointed metal object like a kitchen utensil or small sculpture from somewhere inside the house and desperately target the weakest points on the glass door to the patio. This would only get him as far as the roof though, and without his friends in the helicopter to pick him up, Nemo wouldn't be able to get very far from there. It would be extremely strange if the only way to open it from the inside is by using the electrical control panel. In the event of a power outage or a security system malfunction, this would leave the owner stranded in his apartment with no way to get out. It would only make sense that there must be some way to manually release the lock from inside. If the door is reinforced with a sheet of steel and sealed by the electrical lock with no manual override, then getting out that way isn't going to work either, and Nemo's chances of escape are looking slim. The next morning, Nemo hears a helicopter flying outside. He runs to the window to look, but the chopper passes by without noticing him. Inside, the temperature rises to over 90 degrees Fahrenheit. Nemo goes to the apartment's indoor pool and cools himself off. He tries calling out to number 3 for help once again, but gets no response. Nemo goes to the phone and tries to call out, but quickly realizes that the line is dead. Searching around the art collector's office, he comes across his desk where he finds a calendar showing that the man won't be back from his business trip in Kazakhstan for a very long time. He tries the computer, but it's also been disconnected from the internet. Nemo goes to the master bedroom and bangs at several spots on the long glass window, desperately searching for any weakness. Looking around the room, he finds some moldy oranges on the dresser. Banging them together, he sees that they're actually heavy billiard ball-like sculptures. Grabbing one, he walks to the center of the room and chucks it as hard as he can at the window, but he still can't get the glass to break, and sits down on a nearby table to come up with a new strategy. Looking around the room, Nemo suddenly notices the massive skylight in the ceiling and decides that if he can get to it, he might just be able to escape. He begins by dragging more furniture across the room, slowly constructing a massive tower and using the heaviest objects as its base. Across the room, he finally notices the small indoor garden of live plants with a built-in irrigation system. Nemo crawls through the dirt until he finds the buried hose and removes the cap to try to access the water inside. Desperate for a drink, he turns his attention to the nearby fish tank. He dips a finger in and tests the water out, but it's obviously disgusting and dangerous to consume. And Nemo glares at the fish inside, jealous of its hydration. He tries the bathroom sinks and even the toilet, but there's no running water at all. Finally, he finds an ice cube tray in the freezer and devours the whole thing, rubbing the ice on his lips and licking up every last drop off the countertop. Nemo goes back to constructing his escape tower and takes apart straps of some cloth from a couple of chairs, using it as a way to reinforce the structure. The tower is now a good 16 feet tall, and Nemo carefully starts climbing his way up. Colors turn on in the garden are by far the two biggest things that he's had going for him since he got trapped in there. If properly rationed, that food should keep him going for a long time, and if he comes up with a system to collect the sprinkler water, he'll have a constant source that's safe to drink. With those bases covered, he's bought himself several more weeks to keep working on his tower. He's finally able to reach the skylight, but once he gets there, he finds that the glass is reinforced. In the master bedroom, he takes a closer look at the strange painting on the wall and notices what looks like an image of himself with a forked tongue, getting up to some bad shenanigans. Confused, he decides to lay down for the night, but just as he's about to fall asleep, he notices on the security camera that Jasmine is right outside of the apartment door once again. He runs to the door, screaming and slamming on it with a pan, but she still can't hear him since she has her headphones in and the vacuum is running. Nemo tries to slip a note under the door, but it won't fit, and no matter how loud he screams, she can't seem to hear him. He desperately tries to get her attention, but it's no use. And after a moment, she gets on the elevator and rides it back downstairs. Defeated, Nemo falls into a pile of blankets on the floor and goes to sleep. Okay, now things are getting really interesting. Nemo's showing off a couple of impressive ideas when it comes to survival and escape as he continues working on the tower and uncovering more secret areas of the house. Putting the bowls under the sprinklers was a great idea. That way he'll have access to clean drinking water on a regular basis. If he rations it properly, he should have no problem keeping himself hydrated and avoiding the health risks that come with a lack of water. Making goggles out of the broken glass vase was another very wise move and should help to keep the dust and debris out of his eyes as he continues chipping away at the skylight. Unfortunately, it's soon revealed that the glass is held into its frame by several thick metal bolts. Although this is definitely an annoying factor, he's come too far to give up now, and he's going to need to find out a way to get those bolts off so that he can escape. Most homeowners should have a socket wrench laying around somewhere, so my first instinct would be to search through the drawers and closets for a toolbox. If that fails, there's always the option of trying to create a tool out of some of the stuff he finds around the house. With so many art pieces around, there's bound to be something that he can use to get those bolts out if he thinks creatively. When Nemo found that hidden passageway in the closet, I thought for sure he was going to encounter some sort of genetic abomination or dark family secret. But it turned out to just be a hiding place for the self-portrait he was looking for. And some kind of rubber dummy of an unidentified guy? I have to say, that tunnel really got my hopes up that he was about to uncover something crazy. Or at least something that would have given him more inspiration for how to escape. But no such luck. His best bet still seems to be escaping through the skylight until Jasmine shows up outside the front door once again. If Nemo had chipped away at more of the wood on the door like I mentioned before, he might have been able to bang on the steel and make enough noise to get her to notice him. However, since he hadn't done anything different from the last time she came up, I don't know what he expected to happen. Jasmine probably won't be coming back for another few days, so all that's left for him to do is keep working on the skylight plan. He's got enough food and water to keep going for a little while, but if escaping via the skylight isn't working out and supplies start to run low, he'll have to come up with some other way to get out before this apartment goes from his prison to his tomb. The next morning, Nemo kicks apart a chair and carves into the leg, creating a makeshift tool to try and remove the skylight bolts. He hammers the board onto the bolt and gives it a turn, but the wood splinters from the pressure and breaks in half. Nemo builds himself another tool and goes back to work, this time finally managing to get the first bolt off before that tool also breaks. He goes through tool after tool, slowly making progress on the bolts, but quickly losing what little grip on reality he has left. During his breaks from working on the skylight, he uses a strainer to catch a fish out of the tank and lets it slowly die on the apartment floor. He takes the fish into the kitchen and chops it up with a knife, rolling it into a sort of sushi meal that he almost vomits up as soon as he takes a bite. He also begins drawing strange images all over the bedroom wall, falling further into insanity the more that time passes. Days go by, and on one occasion he notices Jasmine staring right at the security camera, convincing himself that she can somehow see him through it. He manages to get a few more of the bolts off with each day and places them on some sort of weird shrine that he constructed in the bedroom. To make matters worse, the temperature in the apartment starts to rise again, climbing above 70 degrees Fahrenheit. Running out of things to eat, Nemo makes himself a nasty bowl of dog food as a last resort. He sits on the bedroom floor and wears one of the art pieces as a strange shamanic outfit, repeating to himself over and over again in a hoarse voice that he has no energy and he's dying, before laying down to take another nap. Sometime later, he goes to a painting of a man taped up to a wall and pushes it down. He gets back to work and removes another bolt from the skylight, but stumbles backwards and accidentally falls from the top of the tower all the way down to the floor. Writhing in pain, Nemo takes a look at his leg and realizes it's badly injured. That night, Nemo scrapes up the last bits from a jar of jam while he watches fireworks through the window. Suddenly, Jasmine appears in the apartment, standing silently behind him. She approaches Nemo and kneels down on the floor in front of him, leaning in for a kiss but never making contact. She reaches out and feels around his face without ever physically touching him, before backing away and disappearing into the darkness, seemingly a hallucination produced by his exhausted mind. The next morning, Nemo adds a watch to his weird shrine. With his leg now in a splint, he limps towards the bathroom sink and disinfects a big sewing needle with some alcohol. Taking the needle, he tries to stitch up his busted lip, but the art collector suddenly appears behind him and bashes his head into the countertop, knocking him unconscious. Nemo wakes up on the floor bleeding from his nose and head. He stares up at the ceiling, and that's when he notices the smoke alarm, giving him one last idea. Nemo tears up some pieces of paper and places them in a ceramic bowl, then takes a magnifying glass and lights the pieces on fire using the rays of the sun. Once the fire is going strong, he takes a board with a cloth wrapped around the end and douses it with alcohol before holding it over the fire and creating a makeshift torch. He staggers into the bathroom and climbs onto the sink, holding the torch under the alarm until it triggers, setting off the sprinklers all over the apartment. Nemo goes to the front door and starts to scream for help, but still nobody comes. He tries to check the security camera, but the television shorts out as the apartment becomes totally flooded with water. Broken by this defeat, Nemo takes shelter under the stairs until the sprinklers finally shut off. Okay, it looks like we're reaching the end of the line with our friend Nemo, so let's take a moment to review where we're at and any last-ditch plans that he could still try. Nemo's running out of things to eat and tries to make some sushi out of one of the art collector's pets. I guess he forgot that fish are friends, not food. The fish looks like it was about as nasty to eat as you would expect, and the dog food isn't any better as an alternative. He's out of supplies and out of time, and if he's going to escape, it looks like it's now or never. Creating a tool out of the chair legs was a great idea, and once he gets a good method down, he's actually able to remove almost all of the bolts. Due to exhaustion and delirium from having nothing to eat, he takes a big spill from the top of the tower, injuring his leg, but luckily surviving the fall. Nemo starts to experience hallucinations and seems to be on the verge of completely losing his mind, meaning that whatever time he has left is about to run out. Desperate, he turns to his last unexplored option, starting a fire in the apartment and hoping that emergency responders get there in time to get him out. From the beginning, I've had two ideas for how to escape that I wouldn't have wanted to use because of the fact that he also wants to avoid getting arrested by the police. The first thing that came to mind was exactly what he ended up doing, starting a fire using the sunlight coming through the window. Remarkably, no one responds to the fire alarms, and the massive flooding doesn't seem to bother the neighbors on the floor below enough for them to make a call. So I guess that plan was never going to work. Speaking of a lack of response, what kind of security system does this art collector have that can remotely lock doors and activate lights and sirens but doesn't contact the police when there's an intruder? It's like this place was specifically set up to trap robbers inside, but it's no use overthinking that now. The only other idea that Nemo hasn't tried yet is to just make a big sign that says, "Please help me," on the windows, and hope that somebody from one of the nearby towers notices it. There are plenty of canvases and art supplies around, and if he's desperate enough to escape, then this could definitely be a way to get attention from the outside world. Sometime later, snow falls outside while Nemo sits in the dark reading passages from the strange book that he found in the hidden room. Outside on the patio, he hallucinates that the art collector's daughter and dog are watching him through the window. With a new tool to remove the bolts in his hand, Nemo staggers towards his little shrine, raising his hands in front of his strange drawing, before finally stopping to catch his breath. Nemo goes to the front hall and writes a message on the wall, thanking the art collector for letting him stay at his place, but saying for him that it was more of a cage than a home. He apologizes for destroying the apartment, but says that maybe it needed to be destroyed because there can be no creation without destruction. He ascends the tower. The skylight is finally opened, but we're left to wonder if he actually made it